Malala Yousafzai. In the beautiful Swat Valley in Pakistan lived a Muslim girl called Malala. Her home was humble, and so was the school for girls that her father ran. Malala couldn't wait to grow up, attend class, and discover all of her talents. Even though education is every human's right, her mother never had the chance to learn how to read and write. Still, Malala hoped her life would be different. She wanted to prove to everyone that girls can have big dreams too. But Malala's dream became a nightmare when a violent group called the Taliban took control of her valley. They banned most of the things she liked, from listening to music to taking photographs and even flying kites. The Taliban believed that instead of going to school, girls should get married, cover their bodies from head to toe, and never leave the house without their husbands or brothers. It was like being in prison for doing nothing wrong. In just a heartbeat, the Taliban destroyed hundreds of all-girls schools and made parents scared to send their daughters to class. Malala and the rest of the students wondered what they could do to stop the madness. Maybe the Taliban had bombs and guns, but Malala and her friends had books and pens to fight back with. They decided to raise their voices and speak up about how important it was for their future to attend school. They shared their story on a local television, and soon Malala was asked to write a diary about her life under Taliban rule for the BBC. Well, she used the name of a heroine from one of her favorite Pashtun tales, Gul Makai. But for the Taliban, there was nothing scarier than a girl willing to speak up. One day, Malala and two of her friends were shot on their way back home from school, and Malala was very badly injured. The whole world cried for her. When Malala woke up, she couldn't recognize her room, when she'd been taken to a hospital in England, far from home. But children all over the world had written get-well wishes. There was a pile of letters waiting to be read. Malala did not just get better, but stronger and louder. She knew her story was the story of millions of other girls, too. And with her father's help, she created a foundation to improve their lives and their education, called the Malala Fund. 2 years later, she became the youngest person ever to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. Malala brought with her some brave friends from Pakistan, Nigeria, and Syria who deserved the same recognition. From the White House to refugee camps, Malala traveled the world, speaking up about every child's right to go to school. But as soon as she was settled into her new home in England, it was time for her to attend class. The day she received her degree from the University of Oxford was one of her happiest. Still, the next morning, she woke up ready to fight for all the little Malalas in the world and their right to dream as big as they want. And she will keep doing so. The story of Zaha Hadid. Little Zaha was a Muslim girl who lived with her family in Baghdad, a city where past and present mixed in the most amazing ways. From an early age, Zaha dreamt about the future. Zaha had her own taste and liked doing things her way. When she was 7, she started designing clothes, and soon she was working on bedroom furniture. Zaha attended a prestigious Catholic school where children of all religions were welcome. Her favorite classes were math and art. One summer, Zaha and her family traveled to Rome. There, she discovered that walls and ceilings of museums were works of art too, just like the statues and paintings they held. When she was old enough, Zaha went to boarding school in Switzerland, where everyone learned to ski. But she preferred to stay in her room drawing floating spaces that no one had seen before. In college, she studied math and then moved to London to get a master's in architecture, when everyone found her quite unusual. Zaha's ideas were new, and she amazed her teachers with building designs that were not squares or rectangles, but curved shapes. When she graduated, Zaha remained at the school as a teacher. She challenged her students to be curious about forms and materials, just like the great architect Oscar Niemeyer. She had to wait 10 long years until the first of her buildings was completed. It was a fire station made of heavy concrete that looked as light as a paper bird. Zaha experimented with form, designing buildings that looked like giant waves cresting on a shore made of concrete. She convinced the best engineers to challenge machinery and build what was thought to be unbuildable. From Beirut to Beijing, Zaha's curvy buildings changed the skylines of cities forever, creating her own map of what the future might look like. And she was never afraid of using computer programs and technologies that no one had dared to use before. She changed the way that people thought about women, especially an Arab woman in an industry run by men. Zaha brought a sense of femininity to the architecture world. Her colleagues call her the Queen of Curve. Zaha made it to the cover of magazines as the rock star of architecture. She was the first woman and the first Muslim to be awarded the Pritzker Prize, architecture's highest honor. And little Zaha, the Queen of the Curve, became one of the most successful architects of her time, a true pioneer who dreamt of the future and dared to build the impossible. Aretha Franklin. If there was someone in Detroit who was born to sing, it was little Aretha. Her mother was a gospel singer, and her father was a preacher who believed that music could move not only people's hearts, but the world. Her mom left when Aretha was very little, but she never felt alone. Home was always filled with musicians, and she learned to play the piano just by listening to them. She started singing in the gospel choir at the church where her father was a minister. Aretha's voice was so powerful and as smooth as silk. Listening to her, the whole congregation felt that tomorrow would be a brighter day. Convinced of her talent, Aretha's father took her on tour, and together they went from church to church. Whenever Aretha performed, she did it with such grace that people would cry with joy. But even though she loved gospel music, Aretha dreamed that her voice could be heard outside the church, in people's homes. So when a record company offered her a contract, she didn't have to think about it twice. Before long, Aretha's songs were climbing the charts. There was something magical in her voice that moved people's hearts and bodies, much like her most popular song, Respect. It was called Respect, and it was a song written by Otis Redding that sounded more brand new in Aretha's voice. Suddenly, the words of a tired working man became an anthem for African American women demanding equal respect. One of Aretha's friends was Martin Luther King Jr., the great civil rights leader. She stood next to him, challenging people to raise their voices against racism. And when he died, she sang the most beautiful song in his honor, precious Lord. Aretha started writing her own songs and producing them too. She went from gospel to jazz, doo-wop and pop to rhythm and blues, singing every song from the bottom of her heart. She recorded hundreds of great hits, and she loved them all. Aretha used a secret recipe when writing her songs. They had to talk about everyday ups and downs. That's what soul was all about. It took Aretha 30 long years to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but she was the first woman in history to be on the list. Aretha was the queen of soul and a trailblazer for many other female artists. But her greatest honor was singing at the inauguration of the first African American president of the United States. Aretha was voicing one of the most important moments in history. And no one has ever been able to sing a song quite like Aretha. The little girl who asked for equality and won the RESPECT of millions is the greatest soul singer of all time.